to Ed Towers, who is going to tell us about crowdsourcing, innovation, an award-winning example from the Project Excellence Awards 2022.
Thanks, John. Right, I would just let me just share my screen. Some slides. Okay, yeah. Good evening, everyone online and in the room. So it's my pleasure to be with you this evening. My name is Ed Towers. As John may have said, I work for the Financial Conduct Authority, which regulates financial services providers in the UK. But my job is being head of advanced analytics and data science. But I'm not really going to talk too much about all things AI and data science today. I'm talking about a project that we ran and that won the award, as John mentioned, in 2022. My topic for the evening really is how to drive innovation in large organisations, because I believe innovation is a key way for firms to stay effective and relevant in the modern age, but 94% of executives are dissatisfied with their firm's innovation performance, according to a McKinsey study. So that failure to deliver on potential risks making innovation a concept which promises a lot, but never actually delivers. So we need to think about innovation and what's required for it to be successful within a large enterprise. And innovation is not the same as invention. So if invention is the development of an idea in the laboratory, innovation is its practical application in the real world to realise change in the world. Much of our mental picture on innovation is wrong. Like, we tend to think of innovation and we tend to think about the inventor cliche, the Einstein, the genius inventor, the expert, working alone, making breakthroughs, creating a product that's so brilliant that people can't wait to get their hands on it. But the reality is very different. Innovation can come from anywhere, often from people working on the front line, not from the expert. It's a process of iterative refinement, not a brilliant flash in the pan. And many people contribute to it, not just one person. And innovations also require a significant amount of support to get over the resistance they face. My day job is to bring innovation into the world, like to help use AI and data science to make us a better financial regulator, and in order to realise that real change. But I think we need to start by dispelling some myths around innovation and by understanding what's really required. And I'm going to come to the kind of practically how we did this and how we managed it through the Ideas Lab project in the kind of second half of this session. But we're going to start with a little bit of the theory of innovation and the reality of it from some examples. So we're going to go back in history a little bit for the first part of this. So on the left, you have two figures here. On the left, the long curly-haired chap with the rather extravagant cravat is Denis Papin. He was a French scientist and academic. He started his career as president of the Academy of Sciences in France, became a curator for the Scientific Society in Venice, and then the Royal Society in London, where he submitted lots of academic papers. Papin was one of the people who first invented the steam engine, and he also invented the paddle wheel for paddle steamers, but his invention found no practical application and really had very little impact in the world. On the right-hand side, by contrast, is Thomas Newcomen, who was not an academic or a scientist or a highfalutin individual. He was a blacksmith from Devon, but Thomas Newcomen was trying to solve practical problems. He faced the problem of how to stop water flooding coal mines, and he had the necessary skill. He also had an abundant supply of coal, and the first Newcomen machine was built in Warwickshire in 1712, the same year that Papin actually died. It was capable of pumping 120 gallons of water out of a mine up 150 feet a minute. And Newcomen's machine changed the world because it was the first one to actually reach practical application. He succeeded where Papin, who was the man of theory, the man of science, failed. And the innovation didn't stop there, because actually James Watt, who's perhaps better known as the kind of father of the steam engine, then took Newcomen's design, iterated upon it. He was an instrument maker living in Glasgow. He developed this separate kind of condenser which made the steam engine much more efficient. And therefore today we often think James Watt is the inventor of the steam engine, but really his great innovation was just to improve on Newcomen's design. And that leads me to the second point of theory. So the second myth is that innovation is one person's brilliant light bulb moment. Does anyone know who invented the light bulb? Anyone know the answer to that? This would be easy in an American audience.
Edison.
So Thomas Edison did invent the light bulb, but so did Marcelin Jobard in Belgium, William Grote, Frederick Demoliens, Warren de la Rue and Joseph Swan in England, Alexander Lodgin in Russia, Henrik Goebel in Germany, Jean-Eugène Robert Houdin in France, Henry Woodard and Matthew Evans in Canada, Hiram Maxim and John Starr in America. All of them developed a glowing filament in a light bulb. Many of them published designs. Many of those designs were patented, and they all did that before Thomas Edison. But Edison's breakthrough was to develop a cheap and reliable light bulb. And to achieve this, he didn't do it himself. He built a team of 200 craftsmen and scientists who tested 3,000 different designs for the bulb itself and 6,000 different materials for the glowing filament in the middle of the bulb, before they ended up on Japanese bamboo as the successful filament for the Edison light bulb, which was capable of lasting 1,000 hours and made the electric light bulb a reality. The third myth that I've mentioned is that all you need is that brilliant idea. If you have the idea, if it's a good enough idea, it will land. And I have a few examples on this one because it's one of my favorite issues around getting stuff done in large organizations and innovation. Let's start with Robert Goddard. So Robert Goddard is regarded as the father of modern rocket propulsion. He filed over 240 patents, and he formed the basis of kind of modern rocket flight. But he endured like a huge amount of derision when he first set out from his contemporary peers, who argued that his ideas were ludicrous and impossible. A New York Times article in January 1920 said, "He seems to lack the knowledge ladled out daily in high schools." So basically, he just didn't know the basics of physics. But Robert Goddard is also famous for saying every vision is a joke until the first man accomplishes it. Once realized, it becomes commonplace. And in this context, Robert Goddard had the last laugh on that joke, because 49 years later, after that article was published in the New York Times, they finally retracted the article and issued an apology. And they did it 3 days before this picture was taken, because this is the original Saturn V rocket that landed on the moon. So at the point at which rockets were capable of making it to the moon based on Robert Goddard's inventions and ideas, the New York Times decided they might have been wrong in 1920 and finally apologized. I think the other important point is that even when an idea is proven, it can meet significant resistance from interest groups, whether that be within an organization or within larger society. So this is the example of margarine. In America during the 1940s, there was a massive butter shortage caused by World War II. And one of the ways you could tackle this butter shortage was with margarine, because there was an abundance of oil still. But despite that and the shortage, there was huge resistance from the dairy industry, who obviously had a vested interest in butter, and many US states banned margarine. The dairy industry was particularly powerful and important to the state of Wisconsin. And so they, more than any, the ban in Wisconsin persisted a lot longer than all the other states. And specifically what they did was ban yellow margarine, because that looked a bit more like butter. And so this is where we have this innovation that you see on the page that came through of, you know, do-it-yourself yellow margarine. It's a bit like the salt and shake crisps of with a little blue packet of the margarine world. So you pinch the colour berry, knead the bag vigorously, and hey presto, you have some freshly manhandled margarine with yellow streaks through it, I suppose. So this idea didn't catch on, but the demand for margarine was incredibly real. And so a smuggling operation sprung up in Wisconsin, where people were bringing margarine over the state border under the cover of darkness to get through this margarine ban. And even law enforcement got involved. There is one Sheriff Lyman B. Clark was caught smuggling margarine across the border because he wanted to use it in his own county jail to save costs on butter, which was far more expensive. By 1963, the ban was still in force, and 32 tons of margarine was being smuggled into Wisconsin on a weekly basis. But that year, they finally repealed the ban on margarine, and now the people of Wisconsin can enjoy margarine without fear of prosecution. Though personally, I still prefer butter myself. And the final example from these innovation myths and this theme around resistance is Lady Mary Pierpoint. So in the 18th century, smallpox killed 1 in every 3 people which it infected. And in China, Africa, India, other parts of Asia, forms of inoculation had already started to exist, where you basically took a sample of the smallpox disease from a pustule on the skin and used it to inoculate children. But in Western Europe and America, this cure wasn't known about, and the disease went untreated and was still killing 1 in 3 people. So Lady Mary Pierpoint, excuse me, who was the wife of the British diplomat to Istanbul, saw in Istanbul this process of inoculation and decided to have her own children inoculated, and then try and get people back in London to accept the idea. But there was a huge amount of resistance to this. I mean, one of which is probably caused by the understandable danger of semi-infecting a child with a deadly disease, but there was also a fairly healthy dose of misogyny and racism surrounding it. There's Dr. William Wagstaff was quoted as saying, "Posterity will scarcely be brought to believe there's an experiment practiced only by a few ignorant women amongst an illiterate and unthinking people, should upon a slender experience so far obtain in one of the world's politest nations." And that stopped for many years this kind of racism and misogyny, combined with the danger, stopped the vaccine treatment spreading faster. And then it was subsequently discovered that you could use cowpox, which is a much less harmful disease, in order to create the same effect. But the myth and the rumors spread that it would turn you into a cow if you had the vaccine, which is what you see in this cartoon here, people becoming cows because they've had the cowpox vaccine. So that's the kind of history lesson on some of the common myths of innovation and why they are just that, myths. But, you know, having burst some of those bubbles, how can we apply what we've learned there and those principles to innovation in a large modern organization? So 3 lessons, right? I think the first one is that innovation can come from anywhere. So it doesn't have to be your Dennis Papin. It can come from your humble blacksmiths like Thomas Newcomen. as I said, run a data science function. I have a team of extremely well qualified people, many of whom have MSCs and PhDs in data science. And at the moment, I'm busy, like many of my peers, trying to find the best killer use cases for generative AI in the organization. But I suspect that the real idea, the real innovation there will come from someone working in the front line who understands something of the concept of generative AI, but also where the actual practical use cases for it sit. The second principle is that innovation is a process of refinement in which many people contribute, not a process of one individual. So think Thomas Edison and his team of 200 people rather than a lone figure. Linus Pauling, who was a chemist and one of only 5 people ever to win 2 Nobel Prizes, says the way to get good ideas is to get lots of ideas and throw away the bad ones. So whittling down ideas, refining them, is a key part of the process. Whoever has the great idea, the refinement and the development of that idea is always an iterative process. It's somewhat ironic in a sense that I'm here talking to you about a project which won an award for best user engagement, because that phrase user engagement actually has some connotation of a hard line between the technologist and the user. Like, we are sitting on one side of the fence, they are on the other, and we are trying to reach across it. We have to create an environment where there's a free exchange of ideas between people with different backgrounds and different skills and the people who might back them and finance them. We also need to create ways for ideas to grow and emerge fully formed from someone's head. Someone often throws out a very initial rough idea, a little seed of thought, and it requires other people to work on it and refine it. We need the ways that we can catalyze that germination process and make it happen faster and easier. And the third myth, well, the third rule rather, is that innovation requires support to overcome resistance, as we've seen with the 3 different examples of how innovations face resistance. And it's not as simple as telling people in an organization, tell us your ideas. Kindergarten children outperform MBA graduates in this spaghetti challenge, which, where you get basically a load of marshmallows and a load of spaghetti and you have to build the tallest tower. And the reason for that is because when you leave kindergarten and enter a large organization, or maybe missing a few steps there, but when we went to enter into a large organization, you get taught certain hierarchical norms of behavior, such as, how things work around here. Raising questions, taking a different perspective can become quite risky in a large organization because those interest groups, like the dairy farmers of Wisconsin, do exist within organizations. And 85% of executives in another survey from McKinsey said that fear holds back innovation in their companies, but 9 out of 10 organizations polled were doing absolutely nothing about it. So we need to find ways to help people be creative in a corporate context, encourage people to identify great ideas and to sponsor them when they do. And Jeff Bezos is often credited with championing innovation in a relatively successful small technology company called Amazon. And one of their principles in Amazon is that any idea needs to be passed upwards within the organization as long as it has the backing of one person at the level above. So everyone else, if you sit around a team of managers, 7 of them say no, 1 of them says yes, the idea still gets passed up the organization. And ideas need a way to be tested and trialed. They need sponsorship and support, otherwise they can die off before they even get started. However, the opposite is also true. Sometimes ideas can be sustained too long without the appropriate pressure to realize value and return on investment. So finding the right balance between seed support and life support is one of the big challenges around doing new and innovative things in an organization. So I've kind of gone through a lot of theory around these 3 principles of what helps create effective innovation. So now let me tell you how we tackled that within my organisation. The approach we took here is not unique to the FCA. I was inspired at the time actually by some examples within the NHS, and many other organisations have done something similar, but the specifics and our experience of doing it is unique. I'll just briefly give you a bit of context to the FCA, my organisation first. So the FCA regulates the conduct of financial institutions like banks, insurance providers, credit card providers, etc. in the UK. That's 50,000 firms roughly within the UK, serving 40 million consumers of financial products, with over 1 million people employed in financial services in the UK. And that scope isn't static. Our remit is continually growing in complexity and scale, often driven by technology. But we have finite resources in our organisation. So finding ways in which we can meet that mission and do it more efficiently and more effectively through the use of data and technology is a key goal for us. But we do that in order to protect consumers from things like financial scams, harm, mis-selling of products, PPI, people will be aware of from a few years ago. We enhance market integrity and make sure that the financial system performs effectively, and we also promote competition and help to ensure that there is a healthy competitive landscape in financial services. Actually, this came up when I was chatting to John and David before this, but in 2021, our office, like every other office, lay empty because of lockdown and remote working, and it forced us to reevaluate how we deliver, how we collaborate, and how we derive meaning from our work in the era of COVID. So despite the challenges of lockdown, we knew that we had to continue to innovate and use data and technology if we wanted to continue to deliver on those challenges and commitments. We wanted to move forwards in this context, not take a step backwards. So we asked ourselves this question: how can we engage our people to identify, prioritise, and then rapidly develop innovative solutions that will help the FCA to regulate more effectively, all whilst working remotely? And I guess it had a number of principles that we used to kind of shape this. We needed to focus on generating directly valuable and immediate solutions that were supportive and considerate of the stretch that was on the organisation during COVID-19, because there was a fair amount of stress in the financial system at the time, and we needed to make sure that we weren't diverting resource away from that. We had to deliver tangible outcomes from the ideas in 2 to 3 month timescale. So we were trying to get real results in a fast period. We had an emphasis on data and analytics solutions rather than just any tech solution. And we wanted to ensure that any part of the organisation could contribute and make sure that the challenges we gave people weren't too narrow, so that it was only relevant to a small number of people in the organisation. So the FCA Ideas Lab, we used a user engagement program to crowdsource ideas from colleagues. We set a number of challenges. So how can we automate? How can we prioritize our workload and activity more effectively? And how can we discover ways to transform completely how we conduct our duty? From a tech perspective, we used a cloud-based collaboration platform, which is run by a company called Medallia, and we made it accessible to all colleagues in the organisation via a single sign-on. We created this time-boxed approach, which I'll talk through in a little bit more detail, moving through different phases, and the goal was really to democratize the sharing of ideas, to promote and reward engagement, and to deliver those ideas in a quick period. And we set up a team of people, it was relatively small, that ran this initiative. So we had about 2.5 FTE, like working on this over the initial period of setup and design, and then a slightly bigger team of about 7 people delivering these solutions in the 3-month period. We had a regular kind of twice weekly scrum to help kind of coordinate it, and we set up a steering group which was led by some of our sponsors in the wider organization. And we went through this kind of 3-stage process, so which is actually kind of reminiscent again of these three principles for innovation, right? So first of all, we were sourcing ideas as widely as possible because ideas can come from anywhere. We use this online platform for people to be able to submit their ideas, and we kind of created sort of awards for contribution, you know, just badges on the system, etc. We monitored the way in which people were submitting ideas. Then we did the kind of iterative refinement of those through a number of phases. And the first part of that was that when you submitted an idea on the platform, anyone could comment on it or like the idea or make additions to it. And then we went through this process whereby the ideas were whittled down through a number of different experts and ended with a kind of dragon's den pitch to some of our senior leadership team. So that was all designed to kind of refine the ideas. And then finally, we needed to sponsor those ideas so they didn't fall flat on the first step out of the gate. So we created, you know, we committed we would execute 3 of the winning ideas, and we delivered them within a period of 3 months. Each of the ideas had a senior sponsor in the organization to help remove some of the obstacles that they faced as they went through delivery. So that gives you a kind of feel for it. I'm going to give you a little bit of a run through from the perspective of one of the people who submitted an idea that was actually executed, so you get a feel for actually how this worked in practice. So let me introduce you to Jason. He was one of our winning participants, and Jason worked in our policy area, and one of his frustrations was efficiently analysing responses that we get from firms whenever we consult on a new piece of regulation or new policy. So generally we might get 300-500 different organisations submitting comments on a new piece of policy, and they were doing that in a fairly manual way and using a lot of spreadsheets probably and a lot of Word documents. And everyone in policy knew that it was a bad process, but they had no ability to change it. And Jason knew there was a way he could improve the process, but it wasn't clear to him who he actually needed to reach out to, who he could turn to help make that idea a reality. So he became aware of the Ideas Lab because we went around the organisation putting lots of communication material out, talking at all the major staff town halls, putting it all over our intranet pages. And actually we went to Jason's local departmental meeting to talk about it and promote it, and he saw the idea there. And so Jason then logged on to the platform, and this is what the platform looked like, and it gave you three challenges, and he picked automate and submitted an idea. And almost as soon as his idea was live, the feedback started coming in. So he received support from colleagues, as well as suggestions and ways to improve the idea from people right across the organization. And he found that his idea had been shortlisted, at which point we then took it through a panel of experts, basically a panel of data and technologists, to validate the feasibility of the idea first. And he was then selected as one of 12 finalists, given timelines, instructions, contact details for preparing a presentation for our Dragon's Den. And he was provided with an expert kind of pitching support to help him pitch his idea. So we gave all of the people who were finalists training in how to pitch their idea to an executive panel. And he turned up to the Dragon's Den pitched his idea virtually, because this was still COVID, right? So it was a Zoom pitch. But we had lots of people from the wider organisation take place, because we run this week-long Data and Digital Line event every year. And so this is one of the keynote events of that conference session. And it gave also him the largest possible audience to see the power of innovation and hear the ideas that were being shared. And Jason won. He was one of 4 winners, and he was provided with a project team to help, who helped him to develop the delivery plan and then execute the 12-week proof of concept. And he worked with, it was a cross-functional team of business analysts, data people, engineers, and we developed that working proof of concept, which then in this case became a full-length project that was developed a solution that was then rolled out more widely. So how did we do in terms of our kind of 3 ingredients for innovation? Well, first of all, in terms of ideas from everywhere, 1,100 colleagues took part, engaged in the platform, which is just over a quarter of our organisation. 80 ideas were submitted and supported through the process, and it did create that democratization of problem solving and increase the employee voice. It wasn't just the hippo, the highest paid person's opinion, but the best ideas being surfaced from across the organization. And actually, I think 10 of the 12 finalists came from our 2 most junior grades in the organization as well, back to that point of the kind of spaghetti tower, you know, and the problems that people with bright ideas kind of face when they become inured to the organizational norms. On those 80 ideas, we had 1,700 votes in favour or against, and 450 comments, which was an average of 20 votes per idea and 6 comments per idea. So that refinement process of helping people to develop the ideas worked effectively. We had participation from right across the organisation. So we broke down the silos between the tech people and the frontline areas. And the ideas were refined through a process that started with colleagues in the wider organisation, then had that feasibility analysis from the technical SMEs, then had the sort of development idea as well from the technical SMEs. So we then helped them to kind of shape and develop those bits further. The pitch support from experts in kind of providing pitch support, and then the panel of senior leadership who were able to pick the winning ideas. And it also made sure that we weren't duplicating a bit. So I guess we avoided the light bulb problem of having 20 different people inventing the same thing at the same time in different countries, because it was all visible to the organisation. All those ideas were on the platform, all of that was taking place, everyone could see what was happening, everyone could contribute to it. And we removed blockers. We delivered the project on time and under budget. We had 4 months of initial design for how we were going to run this whole thing and for procuring the solution and setting it up. We did 3 months of the actual process to select the ideas, and then 3 months on the proof of concept build. We actually, from the 80 ideas, 35 of them were viable, and some of those were carried forwards outside of the Ideas Lab construct itself. The 4 winners delivered over 12 weeks. And as I said, Jason's idea became a project that has been rolled out across the wider organisation that moved beyond the kind of early phase into it in a full-term project. So kind of on, we're wrap up time. The Ideas Lab is a very structured approach, right, to doing this. It's a very structured approach to creating innovation, and it aimed to incorporate all of those 3 key elements of innovation. It is not the only way to deliver innovation clearly in an organisation, to create engagement or support for ideas. We have reused this concept since, and we've done it at slightly smaller scale. So rather than doing it cross organisation, we've done it within teams and within divisions, as well as doing the whole organisation approach. And there are other structured alternatives to this, right? So there's a lot of people who like to develop methodologies for creating this kind of structure you need around ideas to support them. Hackathons are a kind of common example, or design sprints. In our organization, we actually do run. We're a regulator, so we didn't. So when we first started running hackathons, someone vetoed the term hackathon because they thought it sounded a little bit like sitting on the wrong side of the law enforcement fence. So we call them tech sprints instead. But we run these events where we actually work externally, and we work with industry, with academia, with solution providers, with internal colleagues, and try and solve problems such as how do you tackle push payment fraud? How do you deal with money laundering more effectively? How do you regulate crypto, for example? And we have run a number of these kind of external sprint services as well, which is just another effective way of structured innovation, but that would be an entire presentation in itself. And I think it's also possible to use the same principles and same approaches just to do this without the massive program structure around it, but to do it in BAU mode, right? So I mentioned how, we are seeking, I'm, as part of my day job, currently seeking ideas on how we can apply generative AI in our organization. We haven't gone straight to this kind of structured model, but I already have two brilliant ideas that came not from within my own function, but from people on the front line. And what we are now trying to do is bring together that multidisciplinary team to help refine that idea. We have enough sponsorship and seed funding for running this GNIA program that we can help these ideas get off the ground, and we can deliver them in a lean, effective way. And I think the final point to make is that this is all about making an impact, right? If we get those three ingredients right, if we accept that innovation can come from anywhere, that it needs refinement and needs support, then we can change the way we work through technology and data.